Hello everyone, here is my layout for the next technique lesson, and this technique is long flat shadows. And I've got a layer here of something I grabbed off the internet to show you. This technique I think became a trend in about 2013, mostly on social networking icons and other things for websites and blogs. You see here is a long shadow coming down from the text, and there's also a long shadow here on the edge of this box. And I believe the reason for this is it made some smaller files than the ones that had more of a depth to them. Um, That way they worked better for smartphones. They were able to convert better for smartphones. So I am taking that inspiration from the internet and using it in my layout. And you can see I have a very long shadow here on my title. Now I think it might work better with a smaller title, but that's the title I wanted for my layout. And let me make these images here invisible. So you can see I also have a long shadow coming down from my box here. So let's get started at kind of recreating this. I do want to mention that the first step is the same in Photoshop Elements and Photoshop. I'm working in Photoshop Elements because I like to make sure that everybody can do it in all programs. But in Photoshop, the full version, I did the final step with a layer style. And then I did the final step with this layer in Photoshop Elements. So I'm going to do both of those at the end of the video. I'll move over to the full version of Photoshop. So let's go ahead and make these things invisible. And here is my text, my original text layer. And I do want to mention, well, let's just copy that first. I do want to mention it has a layer style of a drop shadow on it, but we're going to remove that as we begin playing. So I'm going to hit Control J on my keyboard, and I'm going to right click and clear that layer style. So here is the text that I created just simply using the text tool. And I'm going to hit Control J to make a new copy of it. And I'm going to drag it below my text layer. And I'm going to make the original text layer invisible. And I'm going to get my text tool, and I am working in Photoshop Elements, and I don't work in it very often. Here it is. I have to find everything again. So I am going to choose a 50% gray. Let's see where that might be. Here it is. That is the best color to begin working with. You can also choose 50% gray by having the HSB as 0, 0, and 50. You can just manually type right in there. So that's where I'm going to begin. And then I'm going to right click and simplify. You would rasterize in the full version of Photoshop. And now we're going to do a whole bunch of duplicating to move this shadow. I'm going to go ahead and turn on the original one so you can watch it happening. We're going to duplicate a whole bunch of this shadow. So I'm going to hold down my Alt key, and I'm going to hit left on my arrows on the keyboard. Let's zoom in. So you can see that I've created a new layer and it's moved 1 pixel to the left. Now I'm going to hold down my Alt key and just hit the down arrow on my keyboard, and you see it makes another layer. It copies it, makes another layer, and moves it down 1. Then I'm going to hit to the right and the left and the right, and I am just going to keep doing this. Let's zoom out again. You see how it's growing, and I did this on another lesson at for 3D, I believe. I've forgotten where I left off, down or right, so I'm just going to keep going. And it just is making and making and making a whole bunch of layers. And all I'm doing is tapping down and right while holding on to my Alt key. And you want to go at least to the edge of the box that you have your shadow in, but my recommendation is to keep going. I wonder how many of these I'm going to end up with. 100. My recommendation, I'm not going to count, is to go until like every bit of the background layer isn't showing. So it's still showing here and here, so I'm going to keep going. There. Now it's totally past the bottom of this orange background box. So I have made now this very long shadow, but I want to merge it to one layer. So I'm going to hold down Shift and Control, and I'm going to click on the top layer, and I'm going to scroll way down. I'm not going to count them. No way am I going to count them. It's pretty far down there. And personally, I like to keep the first one just in case I want to start over. So I'm going to go to this one here. And now they're all highlighted, and I can right click and choose Merge Layers. Now they are all in one layer, and I'm just going to make this invisible in case I want to use it for anything. I like to do that, kind of saving some steps. So here is my long shadow. Now it doesn't look like this though. So we have to do a few things to it. This is where in Photoshop Elements I would use, or the full version of Photoshop, I would use layer styles. But in this case, I had to do something different in Photoshop Elements because Photoshop Elements doesn't have the same control over layer styles. So what I did was I went and all the tools are in different places in this interface, but you can find them. You can do it. So I went and got this orange color, opened up my foreground color, and I just made it darker. That was kind of an important step. And now we're going to work with a gradient. Now, we've been past the gradient tutorial and used it many times in our classes. So if you don't know how to do these skills, you need to go back to other lessons at Hummy's World. So here's the gradient, and I'm going to open it up. And what I want to do is make this color the foreground color. Make this color white, which is what it normally is. And then this opacity stop, I am going to lower to 0. So we are going to go from a dark, deep color that's a little darker than whatever is in your background. It could be any color, to white with a 0 opacity. That works best. So I'm going to hold down my Control key, click on this shadow layer that I've got going on, so that I get marching ants around it. And then I'm going to keep playing till I get something that looks right with this gradient tool. So I'm going to just drag down, and what I want, it looks like I'm needing to start there. That's pretty good. I don't want something like this where it's dark at the top and it turns to, a white color for the majority of it. I want it to be very gradual. There we go. That's a lot better, where it's really faded at the bottom and it goes from dark to white. Now you can keep playing with this again later, but what I'm going to do is Control D for right now, and we're going to change the blending mode to multiply. Aha! Now you can see it's already looking like a shadow. And we're going to lower the opacity. There's no right or wrong answer to this. You can see now it's looking much more like a drop shadow. And then I'm going to go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and there's my shadow before and after. So there's no right or wrong here. I mean, obviously that's not a good edge. You want to have the edges blurred somewhat. But not too much. So there we go. And there's my shadow that I've got going on. But now I need to clip it because it's going beyond my box, and I don't want it to go beyond my box. So you see here, down here in my original, I have a layer mask. And so what I'm going to do is click on my box in the background. So that I select it to make it the active layer. I'm going to hold my Control key down and click on the thumbnail. Oh, that's the wrong box. Here's the box. So I'm going to click on the thumbnail to get marching ants around it. I'm going to come back up here to my shadow layer, and right here is the layer mask icon. I'm just going to click to add a layer mask, and you see it automatically fills it in with that rectangular shape and cuts that off. Okay, then your last step would be to add a drop shadow to your text. You remember I took it off in the first sample so we could start from the beginning. So I'm going to go in here, add a low shadow, which is too much. So I'm going to adjust it. You want the distance to be and the size to be down low, opacity down low. You want it all to be low because you need it just barely on there. That's a little too much. My distance, I'm going to put it all the way down to, it looks like 6. And just 1 or 2 pixels. Raise that back up. There we go. Now that looks good. Now you see I have a long dark shadow on my text. Now the one down here that I did, I had to do it a little bit differently. So we need to make this drop shadow underneath the box. And here it is on and off so you can see it. And so that's what we're going to recreate. I'm going to turn it off now. First thing we need to do is make some guides to follow. I just found it was so much easier. So I have my rectangle shape here, and then the paper that I have clipped to it here, I'm going to create a new layer so it goes above that. I'm going to get my pencil tool. Now this size doesn't matter really, just something so it's large enough so that you can see. I've just got a regular round brush, and I'm going to hold down with my shift key so I get a straight line, and I'm just going to draw. I draw anywhere you want there, and Control J to duplicate that line layer. So I'm going to go back to my move tool. So we have two of them, and I'm going to separate them. Now I want this to be at a 45-degree angle. The shadow that we created under here is actually at a 45-degree angle. Some of the long flat shadows go at a 45-degree angle this way, and that is fine too. I just did mine the classic way, this way. So I'm going to click down as if to resize or change or turn this line, and I'm going to change the angle to a -45. Now you can click right down in here and type if you need to, and click accept. And then we have to put this in a position. It has to be from the, you can see here how it's moving it over to the edge of this drop shadow. You can see how it is at the same angle as this shadow, but I'm putting a shadow on my box, so I want to put it whoops, right there so it's at the corner, bottom corner of this. Now I'm going to go over here and do the same thing for this one and make it -45 and accept it. And this one is going to be placed as a guide right on the top corner. I want you to observe the text and see that this shadow comes down from the top corner. When we're making these long flat shadows, they come down from this bottom left corner, and from the top right corner is where the shadows cast from. And so we have the same thing here, the bottom left and the top right. Now this does go off down onto your page and out off the page. It's okay, we're just kind of using it as a guide. Okay, so I want my shadow to actually be below the box, so I'm going to click down here to create my new layer so it's underneath my rectangle. And I'm going to get my polygonal lasso tool, and I'm going to click down right here on the edge of my box, and I found it's best to make this using the top section of our selection first. And then I'm going to go to the top corner, and then I'm going to simply, I don't have much here to work with, but I'm going to follow that selection. I need to actually redo this because I've got to be zoomed out when I do it. So I'm going to right here in this corner to this corner, and I'm going to follow the angle of this line here, and I'm going to try to I don't want my shadow to go all the way down. I'm just going to make it long. There's no right or wrong way. So I'm going to click down here, and then I'm going to draw straight across to this line that we're following, and then I'm going to close it. So there is my selection, and then I can hit Alt and Backspace. Now you can use the Paint Bucket tool if you want to paint that in, but I like using that keyboard shortcut. Alt Backspace puts in the foreground color, but I don't need the orange from this. I need the gold from this because we're casting our shadow onto the gold. So I'm going to get my eyedropper tool, click on the gold, and then I need something just a little darker than the gold. Now we're going to do the same as before. though, and I can hit Alt Backspace and you can see we got the gold, but we're going to actually fill this in with a gradient. So let's look at our gradient tool again. Now you want the color stop to be this color you've chosen here, and then you want this color stop to be white. You want this opacity stop to be 100%, and you want this opacity stop to be 0. So then we're going to click OK, and just as before, we're going to just start dragging. Now you can see that's got too much white. I want it to be dark at the top and white at the bottom. So I think you just got to keep playing with it. There it goes. So it's just kind of barely white as it goes down to the bottom. That looks pretty good. If it doesn't work, you can always grab your gradient tool and make another selection and get to it later. So Control D to deselect. Let's go ahead and get rid of these guides. We don't need them anymore. So here we go. We have this, and I'm going to do the Gaussian blur again. I could just hit this, but I'm going to go ahead and double check it. Where's the edge? Since this is a larger element, it might need a larger size blur. Okay, so there we go. I'm going to change it to multiply, and I'm going to lower the opacity. And there is no right or wrong to this. So there is my long shadow, and you can see the angle is the same as with this. I think I might have blurred it a little too much. See, I'm going to hit undo. And let's go blur, Gaussian blur, and lower that some. Let's lower it because I wanted the blur to be similar to the other one. Now we can change that multiply mode. That looks a little better. So there we have it. There's our two long flat shadows, and now we're going to go into the full version of Photoshop and look at how I do this. You can do this way in the full version of Photoshop using the gradient tool, but I use the gradient in layer styles in the full version, so we're going to go look at that. Okay, here we are in the full version of Photoshop, and we're going to look at the layer styles and using a layer style instead of the gradient tool. And so I have here, this is the layer that we made in the full version of Photoshop. Actually, it's been simplified to or rasterized to make the layer mask a part of it. It could still have that layer mask on it as we were just creating. But I'm going to turn that off and turn on my original one that I made in Photoshop. And so you see how that looks really nice. And the way I did that was with a layer style. And I'm going to click here to show you that all I have is a gradient overlay. So let's click on that and observe my gradient overlay. So I'm going to double click here, and you see I have a stop that is a little darker than the orange background, and on the other end I have white, and then this opacity is at 100 and this opacity stop is at 0. So I just created right here in my layer style that gradient overlay rather than using the tool over here and manually drawing it. And then I have my angle at 90%. Now you could change your angle if you want, and that makes something a little bit different and more artistic. But I just found that I really liked it straight up and down at that 90% best. So, I mean, that's simply all there is to it. If you wanted, remember when we were clicking down and having it so it wasn't so dark at the top, or where we had the lightness begin? You can change that in here by clicking on this and then moving this white slider or the dark slider, and it makes it go darker further. So, or you can just change it using this middle section, and you can see how it changes here. See, when we go all the way over here, the color's just on this side, and then when we go all the way over here, you see, so you can move that slider there too, and hit cancel and go back to the default. And then as in the other one, you want to use your multiply blending mode and lower your opacity. I happen to have it at 19. There's no right or wrong answer. So that is how I created it on this, and then you could even copy and paste that onto and use it on this one down here. I actually made this one in Photoshop Elements. So let's see, Control J. So in this case, I would want to fill this with that 50% gray. I have 50% gray here already. Not quite. 0, 0, I thought I did 50. And Alt backspace. So I would want that to be 50% gray. And let's see, we can just create this. Go and add gradient overlay. And this time I'm going to get this color from the background and make it a little darker. So now it's the same as before, white, 0%, and click OK. So there is, I think, I had it all the way down to 19 before. But with this one, it needs to show a little bit more. I am going to go ahead and go in here and just make this color stop just a little bit darker. So there, you can play around in that means. I see I've got this one in black. We could try it and see what happens if we get black and fill it in black. So see, any variety works. Black works well there too. I would think 50% gray is a better option because that's going to take on your colors a little better from your gradient. I actually do like the 50% gray better. There we go. I just wanted to try it to see, but there's no right or wrong answer. And what you have in the background, what color paper you have in the background, what texture you have on it is also going to make a difference on how dark you want your shadow to be. So there we are. Just play around until you get it. There's no right or wrong answers for a lot of this, and I hope you're able to follow this tutorial well because there's lots of steps. I do want to mention, I should have mentioned this earlier, but there are tutorials at Hummy's World, so if you don't know the gradient and some of these other things, this keyboard shortcut was also used in a 3D text tutorial earlier. So we're reusing some skills, so you can go and watch those other videos, and I look forward to seeing what you do.